Welcome to today's deep dive into one of the most emotional and dramatic stories from the 90-Day Fiancé world. This is not just a story about love. It's also about culture, family, betrayal, and the painful choice between tradition and independence. At the heart of it are Jenny Slatin, an American woman who followed her heart across the world, and Sumit Singh, an Indian man torn between his love for Jenny and the strong expectations of his family. Jenny and Sumit had been trapped in family conflict for years. Sumit's parents never truly accepted Jenny. They wanted him to marry a younger Indian woman, start a family, have children, and continue their bloodline. Hearing this again and again broke Jenny's heart. Jenny wanted to live freely and independently. Sumit wanted to respect his culture and care for his parents. Jenny said, "I don't want to live under anyone's control." But Sumit said, "This is our culture. We must take care of our parents." Because of this constant conflict, they decided to separate. In the end, their 4-year relationship ended because of family pressure. On October 18th, their divorce was finalized in court. Soon after, Sumit, wanting to start a new life and honor his parents' wishes, married a younger Indian woman. But the story didn't end there. Jenny later filed a case against Sumit, saying he had borrowed $50,000 from her and never paid it back. The court investigated her claim and found it true. As a result, the court ordered Sumit to pay her $60,000. This was no longer just a TV story. It became real life, full of heartbreak, consequences, and lessons. Every story begins with a spark, and for Jenny and Sumit, that spark started in an unexpected way. Jenny from Palm Springs, California, had lived a normal life. She was divorced, her children were grown, and she was looking for companionship. She turned to the internet, where love can cross borders. That's where she met Sumit Singh. Sumit was younger, funny, and full of life. He lived in India, far from Jenny's quiet American world. At first, it seemed impossible. The distance was huge, the culture was different, and the age gap was large. But love doesn't always make sense. Their conversations became deeper and more emotional. Jenny felt alive again. Sumit was drawn to her kindness and openness. When Jenny decided to visit India, it wasn't just a vacation. It was a leap of faith. She left behind her familiar life to step into a world she barely understood, all for love. Their first meeting was emotional and full of joy. There were smiles, hugs, and tears. For Jenny, it felt like destiny. For Sumit, it felt like a dream coming true. But even from the beginning, shadows started to appear. Jenny's friends and family warned her. They said he's too young. He just wants a visa. This will never work. In India, the doubts were louder. Sumit's parents didn't know about Jenny, and when they finally found out, they were furious. To them, Jenny was completely wrong for their son, an older foreign woman who couldn't give them grandchildren. Still, Jenny and Sumit tried to stay strong. They believed their love could overcome anything. They laughed together, cooked together, and dreamed of a peaceful future. But love is often tested, and for them, the biggest challenge wasn't age or distance. It was the invisible wall of tradition that stood between them and Sumit's family. In India, family means everything. Parents are deeply respected, and their wishes are followed. For many sons, disobeying parents feels unthinkable. Sumit understood this well. When his parents discovered Jenny, they reacted with anger and disappointment. They told him she was not suitable, that she was a danger to their family's honor. She was older, from another country, and couldn't give them the grandchildren they longed for. They reminded Sumit of all the sacrifices they had made for him and how the community would shame them if he chose Jenny. For Jenny, these moments were painful. She had left her entire life in America to be with Sumit, only to feel unwanted and invisible in his world. She tried to earn their love by showing respect. She learned some Hindi, followed Indian traditions, and treated them with kindness. But no matter how hard she tried, nothing changed. The wall between them remained. The constant pressure started to affect their daily lives. Meals turned into arguments. Every phone call from Sumit's parents brought new stress. The happiness they once shared began to fade under the weight of disapproval. Sumit felt trapped. He loved Jenny but couldn't let go of his parents' expectations. Jenny, meanwhile, felt lost and exhausted. She had dreamed of a simple life filled with love and peace. But instead, she was stuck in endless conflict. She began to doubt herself. Was she being selfish? Was she ruining Sumit's relationship with his family? The emotional strain grew heavier each day. The cameras on their show captured everything. The tears, the fights, and the painful silences where love seemed to disappear. What began as a romantic dream was slowly turning into a story of heartbreak and cultural conflict. Even though things were falling apart, Jenny and Sumit tried to hold on. They talked about moving away and starting fresh, but in India, leaving family behind isn't easy. The emotional ties to parents and traditions are powerful. Jenny wanted freedom. She wanted to live her own life without control or judgment. But Sumit couldn't go against his family. Their love was real, but reality was stronger. The cultural gap, the pressure from family, and the constant criticism finally tore them apart. After years of trying, they chose to let go. Sumit followed his parents' wishes and married a young Indian woman, while Jenny focused on rebuilding her life. Later, when Jenny filed the case for the money she claimed Sumit owed her, it marked the final chapter of their story. The court confirmed her claim and ordered Sumit to pay a penalty. It was a sad ending to what had once been a hopeful love story. The story of Jenny Slatin and Sumit Singh is more than just reality TV. It's a story about how love can be powerful, but still not enough to fight against culture and family expectations. Jenny's courage led her across the world for love, but it also brought her heartbreak. Sumit's loyalty to his parents cost him the woman he once called his soulmate. In the end, their story is about two people who loved deeply but were caught between love and duty. It shows that sometimes even the strongest love can't overcome the weight of tradition. What started as a dream ended in pain, but it remains one of the most unforgettable love stories from the 90-Day Fiancé universe. A story of hope, sacrifice, and the difficult truth that love alone can't always conquer everything. Jenny and Sumit held on to their love. They believed, maybe too hopefully, that love could conquer everything. But the truth was that their struggle for acceptance was only beginning, and the price of defiance would be far greater than either of them imagined. For Jenny Slatin, love was supposed to be her safe place. She had crossed oceans, left behind her family, and embraced a new culture for the man she loved. But instead of finding peace, she found herself constantly fighting. Not against Sumit, but against the world around him. The resistance from Sumit's parents never stopped. Every time Jenny thought she was making progress, another wall appeared. She tried everything she could. She learned Indian customs, cooked traditional meals, and wore local clothes to show respect. But no matter what she did, she was never truly accepted. The age gap became the biggest weapon Sumit's parents used against her. They reminded him that Jenny was old enough to be his mother, that she could never give them grandchildren, and that she would never fit the role of a traditional Indian wife. To them, Jenny wasn't just the wrong choice, she was an embarrassment. Still, Jenny refused to give up. She believed that love would be enough, that if she and Sumit stayed strong, his parents would eventually see her heart. She poured herself into proving she was worthy, not only to Sumit, but to his entire family. Yet the more she tried, the more invisible she felt. The community made things worse. Neighbors gossiped, relatives judged, and every gathering reminded Jenny she was an outsider. For Sumit, the pressure was unbearable. He loved Jenny deeply, but he also loved his parents. He wanted both worlds to exist together, but instead they were pulling him apart. The cameras showed everything, Jenny crying alone, wondering if she had made a mistake, and Sumit sitting in silence, torn between his heart and his heritage. Their love story, once full of laughter and hope, was now buried under tension. Still, Jenny kept believing that great love always faced challenges. She told herself this was just another test. She thought if she endured long enough, acceptance would come. But deep down, cracks were forming. Jenny started to feel the weight of her sacrifices. She had given up her life in America, her comfort, and her independence for a love that demanded more from her every day. Sumit, though devoted, was also growing tired. The constant tug-of-war between his parents and Jenny was exhausting him, filling him with guilt and confusion. Their struggle wasn't only about getting family approval anymore. It became about identity, belonging, and whether love could survive when the world refused to see it as real. By this point, Jenny and Sumit were no longer just fighting for their relationship. They were fighting for their right to exist as a couple. And as the pressure grew heavier, one question became clear. How long could they keep fighting before something finally broke? For Jenny, love was never supposed to feel like a cage. She had left her home in America dreaming of freedom. The freedom to love openly, to live honestly, and to find happiness after years of loneliness. But in India, she found that her new life came with invisible chains. Every day, she felt the weight of expectations pressing down on her. Sumit's parents demanded obedience. The community whispered about her age. Even Sumit, the man she had crossed the world for, seemed torn between protecting her and protecting his family's honor. Jenny began to feel trapped. She had always been strong and independent. Back in California, she lived life on her own terms. But now, in a culture where family decisions mattered more than personal desires, she felt powerless. The breaking point came during one of many arguments with Sumit's parents. After years of trying to prove herself, Jenny finally broke down. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I don't want to live under anyone's control. I came here for love, not to be treated like a prisoner." Those words echoed like thunder. For Jenny, it was her way of standing up for herself, not against Sumit, but against the system that refused to see her worth. She wanted to reclaim her voice, her dignity, and her right to live freely. But independence came with a price. Her defiance only made things worse. Sumit's family saw her refusal to obey as disrespect. To them, Jenny wasn't just rejecting tradition, she was rejecting them. Sumit tried to calm everyone down. He begged Jenny to be patient, to understand that change in India takes time. But Jenny had already given up so much, her home, her comfort, her identity, and she was still treated like an outsider. The more she fought for independence, the lonelier she felt. Friends back home told her to leave, to stop wasting her life on a man whose family would never accept her. But Jenny wasn't ready to quit. She loved Sumit deeply and believed that if she stood her ground, he would one day choose her completely. Her fight for independence was no longer just about love. It was about self-respect. She wanted to prove that her age and nationality didn't make her less of a partner. The cameras showed her transformation. The quiet, hopeful woman who once arrived in India had become a fighter. She spoke up for herself, demanded fairness, and refused to be silenced. But independence has two sides. While Jenny became stronger, the gap between her and Sumit's family grew wider. And with each battle she fought, one question lingered. Could their love survive when their worlds were so different? For Sumit, love was never the only thing guiding him. In India, family is everything. It shapes who you are. From the moment he was born, Sumit was taught that his duty was to his parents first, and everything else came second. His parents had sacrificed for him, raised him, and expected that one day he would repay them by continuing the family line. That meant marrying a younger Indian woman, having children, and keeping the Singh name alive. Anything else was seen as betrayal. Sumit loved Jenny, but he also loved his parents. And in his heart, he believed that following tradition wasn't a choice, it was sacred. He often told Jenny, "This is our culture. We must take care of our parents. It's our responsibility." Those words, though honest, hurt Jenny deeply. To her, love meant freedom, equality, and partnership. To Sumit, love could not exist without duty, sacrifice, and respect for family. Their definitions of love collided, and neither could bend without breaking. The cameras captured Sumit's quiet struggle. After arguments, he would sit in silence, guilt written on his face. On one side was Jenny, the woman who had given up everything for him. On the other side were his parents, who reminded him daily of his duty. He was torn between two worlds, knowing that whatever choice he made would break someone's heart. Sumit's loyalty to tradition wasn't just about obeying his parents. It was about who he was. In India, a man who defies his family risks shame, isolation, and the loss of community. Sumit feared that if he chose Jenny completely, he would be cut off and left alone. Jenny couldn't understand this. To her, love should be enough. She couldn't see why Sumit's devotion to his family was stronger than his devotion to her. And that difference, the one between love and duty, became the wall they could never climb. Jenny wanted Sumit to stand up for their relationship, to fight for their love, and to prove that it mattered more than outdated traditions. But Sumit's heart was divided. He wanted to protect Jenny, but he also wanted to protect his parents. He wanted to live freely, but he also wanted to honor his culture. In trying to balance both, he sank deeper into conflict. The more Jenny pushed for independence, the more Sumit held on to tradition. It was as if they stood on opposite sides of a river, each calling for the other to cross, but neither willing to let go of their ground. Their clash wasn't just about marriage. It was about who they were at their core. Jenny represented freedom, choice, and individuality. Sumit represented duty, tradition, and family honor. As tension grew, it became clear their love story was heading toward a breaking point. Jenny's fight for independence and Sumit's loyalty to tradition finally exploded into open conflict, pushing their relationship to the edge of collapse. Every love story has its limits, and for Jenny and Sumit, those limits were tested again and again by the storm of family drama. What began as quiet disapproval soon turned into a roar that neither of them could escape. The tension was everywhere. At family gatherings, Jenny was treated like an outsider. At home, calls from Sumit's parents turned into interrogations. Even in public, they felt the judgmental stares of others. Their relationship was no longer just about two people in love. It had become a daily battle between tradition and independence. Jenny, who had once been hopeful and patient, began to unravel under the pressure. She had given up everything for Sumit, yet she was constantly reminded she didn't belong. The emotional weight was heavy. Nights were filled with tears, arguments, and long silences. Sumit, meanwhile, was drowning in guilt. He wanted to protect Jenny, but couldn't bear losing his parents' approval. Every choice he made hurt someone he loved. If he sided with Jenny, his parents accused him of betrayal. If he sided with them, Jenny felt abandoned. It was a painful cycle with no end. The cameras captured it all. Jenny pleading with Sumit to take a stand, Sumit asking her to be patient, and both of them collapsing under the weight of expectations they could never meet. The breaking point came during one emotional confrontation. Sumit's parents, tired of years of resistance, gave him an ultimatum. If you stay with Jenny, you are no longer our son. Those words destroyed the fragile balance they had been trying to keep. For Jenny, it confirmed her worst fear, that she would never be accepted no matter what she did. For Sumit, it was the hardest choice of his life. Love or family, freedom or tradition. The fallout was immediate. Arguments between them grew more intense. Jenny accused Sumit of being weak, of always choosing his parents over her. Sumit accused Jenny of not understanding his culture and of pushing him into an impossible situation. Their once tender love story turned into a war of words. Jenny's face showed the weight of heartbreak, while Sumit's eyes revealed the pain of a man torn between two worlds. They were no longer partners fighting together. They had become opponents, each demanding something the other could not give. After years of trying, hoping, and believing that love could overcome anything, the truth became clear. The family pressure had won. The relationship that had once defied borders and expectations was now falling apart under the same traditions they had fought so hard against. Eventually, the moment came when they had to make the decision neither of them wanted, to end their relationship and walk away from the love they had sacrificed so much to protect. Every love story has a climax, a point where hope either wins or collapses. For Jenny Slatton and Sumit Singh, that moment came in a courtroom, where years of love, sacrifice, and struggle finally unraveled. The decision to divorce didn't happen overnight. It was the result of countless battles with family, with culture, and with each other. By the time they stood in court, Jenny and Sumit were no longer the hopeful couple who once believed love could conquer all. They were two tired people, scarred by years of conflict. The final straw had been the ultimatum from Sumit's parents. Choose us or lose us. For Sumit, the pressure was too much. He had tried to hold both worlds together, but the weight of tradition was too heavy. Jenny, meanwhile, was tired of waiting for change that would never come. She wanted freedom, respect, and a life where she didn't have to constantly fight to be accepted. On October 18th, the gavel came down. Their divorce was finalized. The courtroom was silent, but the silence was filled with heartbreak. Jenny sat with tears in her eyes, her face showing both grief and relief. She had fought so hard for this love, but in the end, she had to let it go. Sumit sat quietly,